Well, hello and welcome to another episode of More Perfect Marketing. It's David Baer here, and today we're going to be talking about some basics. But when I say basics, I don't want you to get scared or skip ahead or to the next episode or shut this off because these are basics that you probably want to be paying attention to. Because the likelihood is in your business you may have missed one or two of these, and it's always good to kind of revisit those foundational elements of what we're doing to grow our business. Now, I talk about this a lot and I kind of get tired of talking about it. And so inviting somebody else to come and share in the conversation and the teaching is always a good idea. And I have nobody better than Jennifer Tamborski, who is joining me from, I think, near St. Louis, if I remember correctly,
That is correct.
who is actually in a very similar business as mine, and we're going to dig into that a little bit in just a moment. But first, I want to say, Jennifer, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Dave. This is going to be so much fun. These are
Good.
my favorite topics, honestly.
So yeah, before I hit record, you and I were sort of comparing notes about the businesses that we have. We have both been in the marketing services space, and we've both made transitions into being sort of guides and mentors, consultants for clients. And I wonder if yeah, and you have, additional background as well as an NLP specialist. For people
Mhm.
who don't know what that is, it's not the one that's related to artificial intelligence. It's a different one, and we'll talk about that
Absolutely.
for a moment as well. So why don't you just sort of bring us through a little bit of your background and what you're doing
Yeah.
now?
So I ran a digital marketing agency for roughly a decade. And we were a full service on the ground tactics marketing agency. While we definitely helped our clients with strategies, we also implemented the strategies as we went along. And there were a couple of things that I noticed along the way. One of the biggest ones was that a lot of people that came to me weren't ready for an agency and couldn't necessarily afford to hire an agency. Um, and I don't know if this happened within your agency or not, but I actually burned myself out, like serious burnout when it came to running my business. And I almost shut the whole thing down, like completely done, walk away type of thing. Instead, I talked to my business coach and she talked me off the ledge, but I did step back and really assess what was it that I loved? What did I love to do? And it really came down to the strategy more than implementing the tactics. I loved to help my clients develop a strategy and help them walk through how to implement that strategy. So, I have two avatars. We have the one that is that business owner who's hitting six figures. They've hit some success. They need some help. They don't know what to do first or next in the digital marketing world, but they can't afford to hire an agency. And I love working with those clients. I love helping them through that process and helping get them to the point. My goal is to get to the point where they can hire somebody. But more importantly than that, they hire somebody with the full confidence that they actually know what is supposed to happen. Because that is the other thing that I ran into a lot in my agency. My other avatar is those people that are, well on their way to scaling their business. They need somebody to come in and take over their marketing and really manage it well. So that fractional CMO position. And those were the clients that were coming to me in my agency. 90% of them didn't understand what the agency was supposed to be doing for them, what good ROI was. They didn't have the education behind it. So, on both ends, it's about really educating them, helping them with the strategy, managing what it is they think they can do in the time frame that's realistic for it to happen in. And then executing it for in a way that's comfortable for them.
This is very, very familiar territory for me. And yes, I have had some of those experiences that you've described, the burnout, absolutely. Listen, I opened the loop on the NLP thing. We probably should close that now before we move
Yeah.
on. So I'll let you just jump on that one as well.
So I am an NLP master coach. NLP is neuro linguistics programming. It's really a process that teaches you how people think, and more importantly, how to use language to influence how they think. Now, there's a lot of NLP coaches out there. I am not a coach, I am a marketing consultant. But what it gives me that's different than other people is that I understand how people think. And more importantly, I understand how to communicate with them in a way that moves them. So it allows me to incorporate that into the marketing and create effective marketing for my clients.
I was gonna say, did you see what I did there with the open loop thing, by
I
the way?
did. I
Anyway, for
did.
those of you who are wondering what I'm referring to, just look it up. Because we're going to move on and we're going to talk a little bit about, what this sort of foundational elements of marketing piece that I want to really spend some time on, where that sits with these two types of clients that you've talked about, because I can
Yeah.
see, the one that is really a small working toward really having the systems and processes and the things that they need to establish in their business, the routine that maybe they have been, as so many businesses have, they try one thing, it doesn't work. They try another thing, it doesn't work. And they're not really sure what the problem is or where to fix, that problem, because they just don't know all of the moving pieces they should be looking at. And then there's the other end of the spectrum where they didn't know what the role of the agency was. And again, they're not sure about the right systems, the right process, or the right metrics, as you pointed out, to talk
Yeah.
about. And so let's pull back the camera and look at sort of the big picture here. You talk about this importance of building on a solid foundation, or back
Yeah.
to my opening, the basics. And I wonder if
Yeah.
you can sort of walk us through what are those basics?
So I think a lot of business owners, when they first get into business, they work with anybody and everybody that will pay them. And they will do pretty much every tactic in the book to try and get more clients. What they're missing though is, especially in that micro business stage where they're, making six figures ish or even under six figures, what they're missing the most is really consistency in who their audience is, like really dialing in who your audience is so that you know them better than anybody else. Because I will tell you right now, it is so much easier to speak a message to somebody that you know rather than everybody on the planet. I've always said if you try and speak to everybody and anybody, nobody listens because it's just too broad of a message. And in today's world, you have to cut through the noise in order to hit them where they feel it.
Mhm.
So really understanding your audience, really getting clarity on your message. Who is it that you work with? Who is it that you help? What is their problem that you solve? And yes, those seem like very basic issues. And yet, so many business owners don't start there. So many business owners start with whatever guru tactic that they saw, right? I need to run ads. I need to build a funnel. Yes, those are all great tactics to use within your marketing. But if you don't have those foundational pieces first, the funnel and the ads are never going to work. You're just blowing through money and burning up your resources.
This is something I think, you and I see over and over again with businesses out there. And I guess, part of the question is, how do you as a marketer make them aware of or walk them through the, all right, here's what you're missing, or here's the mistakes that you're making, or and really here's what you now need to do to fix that. Because I've had plenty of those conversations. Some go well, some don't. There's a lot of resistance. There's a resistance to the concept that you outlined of the, getting clarity on narrowing the who you're serving and what you're helping them solve. Can you
Yeah.
walk us through kind of how you navigate that?
So I love to do what's called a marketing intensive in my business. And that's really where we deep dive into the business. We look at your goals, we look at what you do, and I ask the questions that you need to ask about your ideal clients. Because sometimes we don't necessarily, it's kind of like seeing that whole forest for the trees kind of scenario. We don't always see what's right in front of our face. And I've had many of clients, especially in the consulting aspect, where we started and they're like, XYZ is who I work with. And within an hour or two of talking to them, we have dug down into this isn't actually who you work with. It might be who you are ideally would like to work with, but that's not who you're attracting. And which means that your message isn't attracting the people you want to work with. So it's really asking those questions. And sometimes we can't see that ourselves. So a lot of times it is having someone like you or I come in and ask the questions that need to be asked. Look at the data, look at the information that you actually have available to you, and then go from there. You're right. Sometimes my clients don't really like the answers I give them. And if they want a successful business, they don't have to necessarily take my advice, but they do have to do something different than what they're doing.
Yeah. There's a difference in the consulting positioning that we have when we're
Yeah.
sort of guiding them through and holding their hand and talking about the focus that they can have and what that outcome looks like, because it's not necessarily from their perspective tied to a thing we're trying to sell them. And I think there's a lot of power in that, taking claiming that role in this situation.
Yeah.
Have you noticed a difference from when you were the agency to now when you're in the consultant role?
Very much so. I think a lot of it stems from in the agency, there's a lot of moving pieces and things move really quickly, and you're oftentimes taking the client's word for who their ideal client is and that information. Like you're gathering what they tell you and going with it. In the consulting world, I think we have a lot more flexibility with our time in that we can actually go, okay, stop. This is what you said originally, but this is actually what's showing up. And we need to like clarify this information before we go down a path of spending money on it.
Yesterday I was walking through some of this with a client in front of a bunch of marketers who were currently training to to go into the consulting role. And as we were working through the idea of what the target market was that she serves, she's in the food business, and she was trying to establish corporate catering in her business. We talked about all of the things that the people she might be selling to cared about. And suddenly, I said, "So how's this going? How are you?" She said, "Wow, you've really opened my eyes to thinking about things I've never thought about before, and I see how valuable, it is to
Yeah.
understand things from the customer's perspective."
I
And I imagine that you have had similar
I
sort of
have,
reactions,
yeah.
aha moments from clients.
Yeah, I actually one of my favorite emails I got was, "You're a genius," which was just responding to because they had created their own and own copy, and I came back and I'm like, "There's nothing in here about your client. This is all about you. Your client doesn't care about you. It needs to start with how you are going to benefit them, and then you put a little blurb in there about you."
Mhm.
Because they honestly don't care, especially if you're going into the corporate space. Corporations really don't care
Yeah.
about you. They care about what you can do for their business.
And an extension of that point is that depending on who the person is in the organization, they may have other priorities that they care about as well. And so really digging into all of that stuff is quite useful and incredibly powerful when you get it right.
Yeah.
So okay, so you now have this element established with a client, right? They have the aha moment. What what do you do next, and what can you build on this as a result of having established this initial foundational piece?
So depending on where the client is at, right? Whether they are the micro business or they're a small business that's looking to scale, um, is there's a little bit of different methods that we're going into, right? With the micro businesses, we're really looking at, okay, you have X amount of clients, you need X amount of leads. How are we going to get there? Sometimes that's a lot of like, let's get you in front of on stages and when I say stages, I mean that very loosely. I don't
Yep.
necessarily mean at a speaking engagement, but
We're on a
let's
stage right now in your
exactly.
definition of a stage.
Exactly.
Mhm.
But get out in front of people so that you can share your message. For those micro businesses, that's oftentimes how they can create lead generation in their business without investing additional financial resources that they may not have. So, ads or those kind of things. For those businesses that are scaling, though, that's when we turn to things like ads because they need a huge number of people in their system, not just maybe 10 or 15. They need hundreds because that's what they're looking to sell, right? They need hundreds and thousands of people. So oftentimes we turn to ads when we're really clear about the message, the target audience, and the funnel that we're going to take them into. That's when we have really success at those smaller business type stages.
And so, I guess the question is, so you're building this stuff out based on sort of decisions you're making, um, uh, uh, things you're probably testing and getting, sort of
Yeah,
response to.
feedback from.
Yeah. And so, uh, where do you end up finding, the clients as you're going through this process? Where do they end up when things are working and when things are don't, and what is that reaction versus the reaction that you might get if you were the service provider and they were going to like it's night and day
It
in my experience.
is. It is night and day. With being the service provider, oftentimes we were blamed for it not working. Now, as the service provider, we weren't necessarily, we may have been setting the strategy, but we were doing it based on what they gave us, the information they gave us. And so oftentimes we were blamed for that. When in reality, I mean, this is one of my favorite stories. I had a client come to me, she wanted leads. She got on 30 sales calls within 2 weeks and she closed 0 of them.
Mm,
Now, after each sales call, I touched base with her to say, "How is this, how is the call?" They were an ideal person. I love them. I know they're going to buy. She closed 0, which tells me it's not a lead problem, it's her sales process problem. As a consultant, I can say, "Okay, you had this sales call, it went well, like you liked the person, they didn't buy from you. We need to dial this back and go, what is the problem? Why are you not able to close the deal?" Because if it's not the person, like if you tell me the person has XYZ and they match all those criterias, they end up on a call with you, then it's a sales process issue.
mhm.
And that's something else we need to figure out entirely. So it's really being able to, I think, shine the light on and hold up a mirror in a way that helps them see where their problems are so they can't shift the blame to somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, this is obviously from our perspective and the baggage that we both carry
Absolutely.
from having been through that, and I don't think that necessarily a business recognizes this from their perspective, but there is something useful about having an outside set of eyes come in and look at your business critically and help you, um, by revealing some of the things that are happening in your business. What types of clients do you find you're working with most often here? And there's a reason I'm asking this because very often we will educate the client about what role we're taking on and how we're adding value by simply using what they would be doing in whatever profession they are, right, to
Yeah.
help whoever they're serving.
Yeah. And oftentimes, I primarily work with service based businesses. So they are, I can clearly define what they are not. They don't sell a product, they are not e commerce, and they don't necessarily have a brick and mortar store.
Mhm,
Most of them are online businesses who have some type of service that they provide. And yes, it is very easy to say, you are in control of these results, just like your clients would be when you work with them in a coaching capacity or whatever.
Mhm.
whatever their service is. I mean, if you're a financial advisor, and I say that not necessarily the people who invest your money, but more like maybe a fractional CFO or a
Mhm.
bookkeeper. You're not in control of how they spend their money. You can give them suggestions and direction and all of that kind of stuff, but they eventually make the decisions. The same goes for us. We can give them guidance and we can show them what would work and how it would. But if they choose not to listen to us and go off in a different path, we have no control over that.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to shift gears a little bit here.
Yeah.
You used a few minutes ago the word scale a few times,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
I remember going to your website and reading through some of the work that you're doing, and you talk about kind of two different paths that you're helping businesses on. One
Yeah.
is scaling, and the other one is growth. And I see far too many people using those terms interchangeably. You don't. I
I
wonder
do
if you can
not.
I wonder
I
if you
do
can
not.
guide us through the difference.
Yeah. So I actually think there are three stages to business. There's startup, which is exactly that. You're starting it's pretty much everyone before they hit six figures, I think, are still in the startup phase. The growth phase is really when you've kind of dialed in your product, service, or solution and you're able to sell it and you've been successful, but you're not quite making the revenue or having the systems in place to do millions of dollars in business. That's the growth phase, and that really can, depending on the business, that can be anywhere from six figures to 500,000 or 1 million. It just depends on what you're selling and how you're selling it.
Mhm.
The scaling phase is when you're going from one to one to many at volume, where you're trying to reach a bigger mass. So if you're thinking about scaling, you're probably at that 750 in revenue and up range where you're really looking to invest heavily so that you can bring in more clients and grow faster. You also have all of the things in place in order to grow. Because one of the things that I see most often is those people at the growth stage, they think they're at the scaling phase and they want to go fast. And my comment to them is always, what would happen if you got 50 new clients tomorrow? And 90% of them are like, I have no idea. I can't handle that many clients. Then you are not at a scaling phase. You are at a growth phase. When you can handle 50 clients coming on board in a day, that's when you're at the scaling phase. That's when you're really looking to ramp up and go fast.
That whole question of capacity is one that I think not only do businesses miss this, but marketers miss this. So let's
Yeah.
go back to the scenarios of the client coming to an agency or a service provider and saying, "Here are the facts," right?
Yeah.
I need X number of leads. I need to book X number of bids or appointments or, whatever it is that is the structure of their sales process, but they don't either have that number of slots available on their calendar, the capacity to deal with those, given the numbers of
Yeah.
people, which may just be one, to take those calls and also serve the clients. And so I think this is a really important point that you bring up, which is understanding the existing resources and capacity. You talk about the idea of scaling business without overstretching resources. And I wonder if you can sort of give an example of what you're looking at, and what that might, be like, and where there's the opportunity or capacity. You kind of framed it just a moment ago. Can you make it a little more
Yeah.
tangible for
So
us?
if we're talking about the growth phase of business, it's about setting up those initial automations so that you're not manually doing everything, right? If we're talking about scaling, it really is having the right people in the right places of your business so that you are not the person doing all of the things. I will tell you right now, the CEO of Walmart, Mark Zuckerberg, all of these big entrepreneurs that we, know, like, hate, whatever your feelings are towards them, they're not doing everything. They're standing there, they're doing the strategy, they're doing the visioning, they're the big people, they manipulate the actual business, but they're not doing the actionable items. They
Yeah.
have people underneath them doing that. And when you're scaling, that's what you need to think about. Who do I have in what spots? And are they the right people in the right spots? It's where I think being a fractional CMO comes in oftentimes. When people are in that scaling phase, they are looking to put the people in the right spots, but they may not be ready to hire someone full time for that. And that's where us as fractionals come in
Yeah.
to help kind of move that along.
So you bring up an interesting sort of additional element here that I want to underscore, because what I just heard you talking about is not marketing from the way that most business owners think about it, right? You were talking about some Michael Gerber stuff and some Jim Collins stuff
Yeah.
related to operations.
Yes.
How does operations and the structure of operations, the foundation, we'll go back to that word, right,
Yeah.
relate to marketing?
It has to be going hand in hand. Like, they have to be interchangeable because, like I was saying earlier, if I bring you 500 people and you don't have the operational capacity to actually serve those 500 people, then your business crumbles. And what do you do then? And I think there's so much. I actually have a friend who she actually works on people with their operations, and she calls it that messy middle. It's about figuring out how to um, create the operations that go hand in hand with the marketing. So I can help you with your marketing strategy. And if we're looking to scale and scale rapidly, we also need to make sure that your operations can handle what we're doing.
You say a business can crumble, and it can crumble simply from not being able to serve those people, but also there's the sort of extension of that, which is reputation, and word
Mhm.
of mouth is not always a good thing.
Burnout.
It also can be a bad thing, right?
Yes. It's also about burnout. Like, the last thing we want is you as a business owner to burn out because
Mhm.
you're trying to handle all of these things. So it really is about knowing where you're at in your business and what you need in order to grow it, but then also doing it in a way that's sustainable and that is structurally sound so that you can build on a solid foundation.
There's a few other things I want to circle back with you on, but mostly what I want to know is, um, how does somebody recognize that they should be reaching out to you?
Um, the biggest indicator, there's two. One, you're not making what you want to make in your business. Like, you're not getting the leads you want, you're not getting the sales you want. The second piece is you're really close for those fractional level clients, you're really close to burnout because oftentimes they hit like around that 500,000 to $1 million mark and they're doing all of the things. And there's no necessarily strategy in place. They may have some team members taking over pieces, but they haven't developed a strategy that's really going to be a solid foundational strategy. If you're a micro business, you're exhausted by trying to be on everywhere and do everything. And again, you're throwing spaghetti at the wall. You're not sure what even works.
Yeah. You also, as we've discussed, have a podcast.
I do.
And I find that there's such value for those of us who are working with businesses to continue learning, right?
Mhm.
I've talked about a couple of books or a couple of authors a moment ago, and we're constantly, going through new business books. But another place where I learn in addition to books is from folks like you, who I get a chance to talk to and learn from. And I'm curious if there's, one or two highlights of the, I think it's you currently have published 150 some odd episodes, with I know a bunch waiting to be scheduled for broadcast. Um, Any thing that really stands out as something you learned from the process of talking to others?
So I will say one of my favorite podcasts was actually this last December, and it's less about what I learned from others and more about what I learned through running my agency and really how it affected my life and my health and everything else. When I pivoted to the consulting aspect of business and away from the agency, it really was because I had burned myself out to the
Mm,
point that everything was suffering. Like I felt like my business ate my life. And so my goal with my clients, no matter what stage of business, whether you're growth or whether you're scaling, is to make it so that your business is is a supportive role in your life, not so that it is your life,
mm,
because I think that's where burnout comes in. Um, that is one of my favorite episodes this last year. I have a ton of episodes about tactics out there. So if you're looking on, you know, why ads work at this stage or launching or, all of these different things, there's tons of episodes out there about that.
mhm.
But that's a lot of this last year has been about how to create a business without overextending yourself and your resources.
Yeah.
And when I say resources, I'm not just talking money. I'm also talking your mind, your energy, your health, just your mental health. All of those things are part of your resources. And if those aren't healthy and stable, your business isn't going to last long.
I wholeheartedly agree. I've been through some of that too, and I can appreciate the wisdom from your experience. So, for folks who are interested in finding you, chatting with you, where can they do that?
So if you're interested in chatting with me, you can head over to virtualmarketingexpert.com. All of the resources that I have are on that website, as well as a free opportunity for a strategy call. If you're struggling with your marketing or your lead generation, that's where we start.
Excellent. And there's a big button on the site that says "Talk to the expert," and
It does.
I assume
Yeah.
you're the one at the other end there.
That would be me at the other end.
Well, this is fantastic. Jennifer Tamborski, thank you so very much for hanging out with me. This has been really insightful and a really wonderful conversation.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Indeed. Folks, you've been listening to More Perfect Marketing. If you know somebody who can benefit from listening to the conversation you just heard, please share this with them. Until next time, I'm David Baer. Take care.